Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our mental health seminar session, empowerment session on tonight, 2023. We are so glad that you have joined us tonight. We have some awesome conversation for you tonight. And so I want to make sure we get our time in. And so we're going to start tonight. I'm going to introduce none other than our Elder Joanne Cadogan on tonight, who will open us up and welcome us, and then we'll get the conversation started. Just a few housekeeping rules. You can see us. We cannot see you, but we can see your comments. And there is a question and answer button down at the bottom. Please feel free to use that question and answer button to ask any questions that you may have and chat, or you can chat with us. So with that being said, Elder Cadogan, you can welcome us and open us. Thank you again for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much, Minister Sharita, and thank you for everyone that's watching. Tonight, we are excited. When I say we're excited, we are excited tonight. I truly believe each time we have our mental health empowerment session, it goes higher and higher. So we welcome you tonight. For everyone that is watching, we want you to not only sit back, but we want you also to engage in the conversation in the chat room. Do not feel like no question is not special or important. We want you to ask the questions that you've been wanting to ask someone and didn't want it to be known who was asking. So tonight we ask you, jump on in there, get involved. We got the best of the best. God has endowed us with our panelists tonight. And as I was told coming on, they're on fire. And they're ready for the question. So throw it at them. Let's work them. See what God has put in them. On that note, let us go to prayer and let's get it started, because you can see I am excited tonight. Praise God. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this night. We thank you, oh God, because it was preordained and destined for everyone that's on here tonight. You have already, God, endowed them with the words, with the information to be shared. We thank you, oh God, because everyone that's watching, we pray, oh God, that you will also engage them, not only just engaging, but also take it back, oh God, that they will be blessed and they will continue to know how to go on and carry. So everyone that's here tonight, we ask that you will open up their understanding, open up their hearts, open up their minds to receive. Lord, we thank you. Let your anointing flow right now through every vessel that's watching, through every vessel that is seeking to know answers. So we thank you right now. In the mighty name of Jesus, we say amen and amen. Now, on that note, it gives me an honor and a privilege to introduce our moderator tonight. She is not a stranger to no one. She has made herself available, made herself known in the community amongst everyone, every woman, boy, girl that has come across her. As I introduce tonight to you, none other than our very own Silvia Carol Grant. She is a life coach. She's a counselor and a heart specialist. She's also a graduate of the college that she loves. She thinks it's no other college but Bethune-Cookman College. Uh-oh, I see I got a witness on the panel. I better step back and be careful what I say. Oh, praise God. She is also a member of the best church in Palm Beach County, and that's Word of Faith, under the leadership of Pastor Jonathan and Tricka Brown. We thank God for Word of Faith. We thank God for our pastors. And she not only, it's so much I can say, but I got to brief it because she really gave me about 3 long books here. So I got to shorten the books. Yeah, the book you wrote last time, remember that? Let's see. She's a counselor at the Pace Center for Girls, and she is a career-bound coach with the boys and girl. She has a degree in speech, communication, and theater arts. She received her Master of Science degree in psychological, I think is very important, studies with consecration in counseling from Nova Southeastern University. It says that she obtained her CLC certification through the, what is this here? Say Life Coach Institute for Professional Coaching. I think that's enough. I'll let the rest of the books end on, we'll save it for another time, if you don't mind. So as I present and bring on none other than Silvia Carol Grant, we welcome you. Thank you.
Thank you, Elder Cadogan, for that introduction. Thank you so much. Again, welcome everyone to our mental health empowerment session on tonight. As the world returns, the conversation continues. We know we've been the last couple of years in a pandemic, but the world is returning. So the conversation definitely will continue. So tonight I have 4 phenomenal panelists who are very dear to my heart, and they have different expertise in the area of mental health. So at this time, I am going to ask each one of them to give us a little introduction about themselves, let you all know who they are, their schooling, and their mental health expertise or connection, if it's present or in the past. So we will start with none other than Dr. Lewis.
Hello and good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Cortina Lewis, aka the Girlfriend Therapist, and I am the owner of the Noir Center for Intuitive Healing and Counseling. I have a master's degree in mental health counseling and a PhD in clinical sexology. I am licensed in Florida, Georgia, Texas, and Wisconsin. I am an international life coach. I am also an author, and I have been providing professional mental health counseling therapeutic services since 2009.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. As you all can see, she has a wealth of knowledge in the mental health area. Now we're going to go to Mr. G. Allen Williams.
Good evening, everyone. Happy to be here for the 2nd year in a row. I thank Sister Carol Grant and Word Faith Church for inviting me back. I am the owner and operator of Big Al's Barbecue Sauce. I've been a youth mental health trainer for 5 years now. Also just recently trained in teen mental health, and been doing that for a year now. So that's a little bit of my background in the mental health field.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. We know the teens, they have a lot of mental health going on. So we thank you for providing those services to them in the community. Next, we will go over to Mr. Gerard McKently.
Good evening. My name is Gerard McKently. I am a graduate of the great Bethune-Cookman College, now known as Bethune-Cookman University. I have a doctorate degree in life. They don't give out degrees for that, but I have a doctorate degree in life. My mental health background, I worked in the mental health field for about 6 years at South County Mental Health Center in Delray Beach. Started out as a mental health tech and did everything from psychosocial rehab counseling to being a part of the mobile response crisis team.
Thank you, Mr. McKently. Again, as I'm going to probably keep saying throughout the night, we have different people with different expertise all around knowledgeable about mental health because we know like those different facilities and the mobile crisis are a part, and we'll get into that a little later, but thank you, Mr. McKently. And last but not least, we have Dr. Davina Jones, my professor, will always be my professor, even though she's moved on. But go ahead, Dr. Jones.
Blessings and greetings to each of you, Sister Carol, to all of the guests. Likewise to Pastor Brown and Lady Brown for just supporting this kind of a conversation within the faith community. So blessings to each of you. By training or by trade, I've served as a college professor for years. Some aspects of leadership. I currently serve as the provost for the Porter campus of Pasco Hernando State College in Wesley Chapel, Florida. My connection to mental health, I so respect and look forward to learning from all of the panelists who work directly in mental health by training. I'm a bit of a cousin to mental health. My background is interpersonal communication, which is a cousin to psychology. Certainly in higher ed and education in general. We were looking at, matter of fact, suspension notices today and individuals trying to get back in school. And almost all of them noted mental health was the cause of their scenario. And that has been my consistent experience in college. Most students that don't pass my class or that have an issue on the campus, it's rarely about can they read. It's usually a mental health scenario. And so more than discussions about grades, I find myself talking about mental health. So blessings to each of you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jones, and thank you all again for being a part of this panel and sharing your expertise, and also for sharing your heart on this evening with the viewers. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into the conversation as the world returns. So I am going to start out by defining what mental health actually is, and then we're going to move forward. So mental health. Mental health is a person's actually condition with regard to their psychological, their emotional well-being. It also includes emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, how we feel, and how we act and interact with others. It helps us to also determine how we handle stress, how we relate to others, and make healthy choices. And I wanted to define that because I know a lot of times when people think about mental health, the first thing that comes to their mind, majority of the time, is different disorders that people may have. But mental health overall is how we move, how we think, how we act, how we are in relationship with each other and with others. So I wanted to get us started with defining what mental health is. So at this time, to kick off the conversation, I want to ask each one of you all, what is actually mental health to you in your own words?
I'm jumping in first.
Go ahead and jump in.
So one thing I've kind of always said when it comes down to mental health, I think of the 4 L's. And mental health, it's going to affect how you live. It will affect how you learn. It will affect how you love. It will affect how you laugh. So to me, that is kind of what when I think of mental health, I'm looking at it from those 4 aspects. Even personally, I'm looking at how I'm living, how I'm learning, how I'm loving, and how I'm laughing. And that's kind of just how, that I think that if we look at it that on that simplistic side, even though it's deeper than that, but if we think about 4 L's, I think we'll be able to help each other out.
Well,
I'll go next.
Oh, ladies first.
Well, thank you. I like to make sure that I share with people that mental health is not just the absence of mental illness, but it is also how we respond, our coping mechanisms, how we have a positive outlook on the life ahead of us, and how we are conditioning ourselves to be as effective as we move forward, and how we improve our mental health. So a lot of times when you hear people say, mental health, it's always looked at it from a negative perspective, like something is wrong with them. I want for us to get out of that notion and know that it's more than just the absence of mental illness.
No, I should have went first. Basically what she said, the ability to navigate through life, traumas, challenges, and be able to find that healthy balance. You know, that to me, that's what mental health is, being able to balance stress, life's challenges, and still keep a level head.
Wow, thank you. I got something from all of that. I think for me, one way that I look at mental health is an exploration of alignment, alignment between what we're feeling, what the facts are, and sometimes what the truth is, which can be different from what you're feeling. And it may also be different than just what the facts say. So the fact may be that I'm homeless, but the truth is that I'm not, it's not over for me, so to speak. So finding alignment, the exploration of alignment between what we're feeling, what the facts may be, and what kind of truth can we access to bring alignment in all those parts of us.
Thank you all, because mental health is all of that. I even think about, when I think about the components of mental health, and I think about the physical, I think about the emotional, I think about the financial hardships that others go through, the economic statuses, the spiritual part of it, also the intellectual part of it too, and the social. So all of those things that you said comprise of those different components. So thank you all for that. So what would you all say, just a quick general, what is the cause of mental health concerns and issues that we are facing?
I believe a number of things can be a cause of mental health problems. Like we stated before, the mismanagement of stress, traumatic events, some mental health issues are even hereditary and they're passed down. So, yeah.
That's really, really good. Any others?
Kind of like what Gerard said, I would say sometimes the inability to cope with life on life's terms. And so sometimes we become dysregulated and we don't understand our emotions. Sometimes, growing up, it was not safe to show certain emotions. And so as we get older and we are navigating through these emotions that have had to be and maintained and that were maintained and suppressed, we don't really know if it's safe to show our vulnerability and our emotions. We don't know how to control them. We don't know how to harness them. We don't know how to keep them at bay. And so that, and a lot of teens, and I think that Alan can speak to this, that because they don't know how to regulate that, what we see on the outside is mismanaged behaviors, but it's the inability to really know how to deal with what's coming up for them. And so I think if you don't get it in childhood, you're not going to get it in adulthood unless you are intentional about figuring out, how do I deal with, navigate, and cope with the emotions that I am feeling, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. Because I like to say there is no bad emotion. All emotions are equal. Happiness, anger, I am a human. God has given me the ability to feel all of these things. It's just, how am I responding to what it is that I am feeling? I can get angry. That's okay. I don't have to go punch 20 people in the face because I'm angry. How am I responding to the anger that I'm feeling inside of me? And so that's what we need to learn how to deal with and utilize our coping mechanisms and skills in order to help us navigate the emotions that we feel.
That is so good, Dr. Lewis, because I see it on a daily basis a lot when you just said about the teens and the youth. A lot of them don't know how to express themselves. And they're watching their parents and other adults who are responsible for them, how they respond. So of course, we know a lot of times that's learned behavior. So when something happens, they're like, oh, that's how my mom responded, or my aunt, or whomever their caregiver is, then this is how I should respond. But it's not necessarily the right response that it should be. And they're responding off of learned behavior too as well. And even some of us as adults, we respond in ways that we've learned. So it's like unlearning all of these different things to get down the right path of where we need to go and where we need to be in communing and relationship and work and all, because we have to be in this world. So that is so good. So with that being said, even talking about the teens, we'll stay right here really quick. I'm going to jump to you, Mr. Williams. What are some things you feel that we do have in place for our teens in regards to their mental health concerns?
Well, I know that the school district of Palm Beach County has been really doing trying to do a pretty good job of getting the word out to our teens and providing them access to assistance. I think our teens are they're learning resiliency, very much so. We got to remember our teens right now have gone through the pandemic. They've learned how to learn in an environment that is not conducive to learning on the computer, right? And they've been resilient through that. I think we just have to continue to have that message, deliver that message to them, and show them their resiliency, because sometimes they don't see it. Sometimes they are unaware of how resilient they actually are. So when no one puts that to your face, like, look, you went through this. I've never gone through it. I didn't have to go through in high school or elementary school or middle school and learn on a computer because I couldn't go outside. I couldn't play with my friends. I had to do this, and you all made it. You made it through. So sometimes you just have to tell them. You have to teach them that their resiliency is there, and they are resilient. And I think they'll pull through. I think they're doing a good job currently of pulling themselves through as this pandemic starts to really dissipate. I think they've done a remarkable job for the most part of building each other up, because you start to see around the school district, you're starting to see teens building each other up a little bit more than they did before, because they're starting to realize I can lean on these people because they've been on the same thing I've been through. So some of them don't feel as alone as they once did. Did I answer that question?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
You did very well. Now, my question then comes, and this is generally for everyone too. Do you feel like our parents and guardians and caregivers are actually taking taking advantage of a lot of the resources that are available to them in regards to the kids for their mental health, and some of them that have these different intense behavioral patterns that we see?
No. Well, let me rephrase that. I think it depends on, it's cultural. Because I work right now, I'm the outreach coordinator for Pathways to Prosperity in Boynton Beach, and we offer different services to parents. And our goal now is to reach out to our African-American community, because we're not taking advantage of free services that some of these people desperately need. So I think it's a cultural thing. Like you said, there's a stigma that is associated with mental health.
Right.
And we are a proud people, and we don't want to let anybody know what's going on in our house. We were always taught that, don't you tell anybody what's going on in this house. And so when you reach out for help, that's letting somebody know that you're vulnerable, there's a problem. And so we tend to shy away from getting help because we don't want to let people know that we have issues.
I would say I think it's multi-layered, because me having a private practice, it's funny when I'm talking to the parents, how many of them are open to their children receiving services. And I think it also has to do with socioeconomic status as well. because a lot of middle class and upper middle class Black individuals and families that I see, they tend to sometimes be more open about allowing their children to receive services versus others, probably because of maybe embarrassment or shame about their current situation, maybe the lack of understanding, continuing to bear that bag of stigma, like, no, whatever's happening in our home, we don't want any more of the system in our home, right? Because they may have had DCF involvement, and it's like, nope, we don't want those people in our business. And so they're a little bit more resistant to allowing quality care providers provide them with services, even if it's free, because of a mistrust of the system. So I believe that it is our job as Black and Brown individuals to help destigmatize what that looks like and what that means, and to say, hey, I'm not here to harm you, but let me give you a little bit of psychoeducation. Let me give you a little bit of knowledge about these resources and how beneficial they can be. Sometimes it's as simple as saying, Mom, aren't you tired? Let's talk about this exhaustion that you carry on an everyday basis. And you start with something that they can connect with, so that they can see, oh, they're not trying to tell me that I'm a horrible mom or a horrible dad, or I'm doing something. Sometimes you have to meet them at their level in order to get them, so that you can help pull them up and they understand the importance of mental wellness.
So
You come off. Go ahead.
yeah, I'm gonna go. I agree with everything that Gerard and Dr. Lewis said. I honestly think on some level, it's kind of like you don't know what you don't know. You know, we all had, most of us, you know, either knew or had a family member that had mental health growing up. And what did grandma do? Leave them alone. Leave her alone. You know, push it off to the side. And then when you have that, when you grow up, and then when you're going through it, I had to do a gut check to myself. Having a conversation with my daughter, I started thinking about my pet, growing up. Some things we try to blame the youth, like, oh, they just don't know. They don't go outside and play. They're not as tough as us. We blame them, but then when we go back, if you take a second to go back and think about some of the things that we went through as young people, you will realize that we had some issues that we never resolved. Growing up on the playground, experiencing bullying, just different aspects of growing up that we all experienced, but we never dealt with it. We just kind of push it to the side and say, well, life is what it is, and kept it moving. But now as adults, we still carry that baggage. And because we carry that baggage, we don't even know how to help our youth, some of us. We don't know how to help our children when they're experiencing things, because we still got traumas our own self that we're trying to deal with. So I think that, if we as the adults start to accept mental health, because to be honest with you, the youth have accepted it. You will have children say, I need help. I need help. But it's to be the adults to say, you'll be all right. You'll be okay. You'll get through this. But they're looking for the assistance, right? So I think that once the adults start to realize that getting help and lose the stigma of getting help and getting support, then I think that we'll see a change inside of our community and other communities as well. I think we'll see a change inside of our community.
But Mr. Williams, the biggest part about that is when we say to our teens that I am here for you, we really have to be prepared to hold space and not judge and not condemn and not criticize. Because if we say, hey, I can hold space for you, I might not agree with what you're saying, I might not even understand it, but in that moment when you're being vulnerable with me, I am able to hear you and hold space for you to say whatever it is that you feel like is on your heart. As adults, I charge us to be able to do that, because once we start condemning and criticizing, we have lost them, and they're never going to come back and feel like they have a safe space with us.
And also piggyback on something that you said, Mr. Williams. You mentioned that when the parents are still dealing with trauma from their youth, and you said these children are more open to seeking help. But you have to realize is that when we were growing up, the help that they're getting now, we didn't have back then. And so some of the parents are learning from their children how to deal with things that they dealt with back in the day, because these kids, the stuff that they have in place for them today, if we had back then, I'm sure that a lot of us would be further along than where we are now.
These reflections are absolutely amazing. I just add just a little 2 cents. I heard the word mistrust. And I think there's something to that in addition to what's been said, because when you talk about therapy and it supposedly being a safe place, many of our traumas come from places that were supposed to be safe. And so rebuilding that trust, takes a lot of energy. You know, somebody's coming to you as a therapist or a life coach, and the trauma occurred in my bedroom, or the trauma occurred in the locker room, the trauma occurred in the classroom, the trauma occurred in the pulpit, in the choir stand, behind the Boys and Girls Club, in the YMCA. So a lot of our search is because a safe place has been violated. And so I love what we're saying, because it encourages us to just remember that we have to, give some extra effort to allow that trust to be built. Even when we talk about culturally, it's the same thing with medical scenarios. Many of our older members of the African American community, I'm assuming most of the participants here tonight are African American, they're not very trusting of the doctor. I mean, they're some of them are in the same generation as the Tuskegee scenario, or one generation from that. And so a lot of traumatic things have happened in the name of a safe place, in the name of authority, in the name of, health, so to speak. Henrietta Lacks. I mean, we can go down the list. And so a lot of people are coming or not coming because all of that has to almost what we're saying, Jeremiah, you got to tear down before you build up. And so a lot of that is happening in the process.
I totally agree with all of you all. And like you just said, Dr. Jones, because it's like we're in rebuild and reconstruction mode in general, all the way around. And we're now, getting all of these different services in and trying to see now where we need to put them and things of that nature. But we're going to take a pause for a minute. The conversation, you all, is not over, because there's a lot more that we need to discuss and a lot more that I want to ask questions in regards to. But we're going to take a pause for a minute and have Evangelist Naranda come on for a guest testimonial as it relates to experiences with mental health. And then we'll be back on to finish the conversation.
Good evening, everyone. I'm glad to be here. I'm loving everything that I've heard and what I'm hearing, and it's a blessing. A quick testimonial about mental health issues. Last year around Thanksgiving, right before Thanksgiving, I had my grandson and I took him back up to New York, and I was there for a very short time and had dinner with my son. We had a great time that night, flew back Sunday. By Monday morning, about 9 o'clock in the morning, I had received a phone call that he was not at work and someone needs to find him. And we come to find out about 20 minutes later that he tried to take his own life. I heard somebody said the trials of life, the things about life. Once we got to him, or everybody who was up in New York got to him and found out what was going on, we had to commit him into a place, but it was only for a week just to get him some help. to see what was going on, and come to find out it wasn't just one situation, as I heard many of the panelists say. It was many situations over time, even through childhood, even through things that he had seen me go through. So it's very important to understand, even as single mothers and mothers who get remarried, that, you know, sometimes when people say they're okay or we're okay or people are seeming happy, there's still unresolved issues. Thank God that my son is doing well now. However, the one thing that grieved me the most about that day, besides not being there, was it wasn't even 12 noon, and he was the sixth young person in their teens or 20s that tried to kill themselves. The first 5 succeeded that morning. My son did not. So even in that, we have to be careful as we talk about mental health, and we need to find out triggers. And a lot of these people reached out. Even my son tried to reach out to a few people that morning. Thank God we listened where many didn't and wasn't able to catch them. So I ask you just to take into everything that you're hearing today, everything that you're seeing, and just know that, you know, we are the ones that's going to be there for our children to help them in the end. God bless you all.
Thank you, Evangelist Naranda, for that testimonial. And it is true that we are going to be the ones to step in to help, to give these different parents and even others services of what's going on, which brings me to my next question that I wanted to ask before we ended or we took our pause. Do you all feel like our government is actually taking into account the mental health crisis that we are incurring nationwide and that we are facing? Do you all think that they are seriously taking into an account? Now, I do know there are a lot of dollars out there now for mental health that wasn't in the past, but do we think that they are putting them in the right places and really taking into account the mental health crisis as we're returning back?
Dr. Lewis, you gonna jump on first?
I was, but
No, you can't. Go ahead.
so I'm going to say, I think it's important to everyone. However, importance does not mean prioritization. So just because I think that something is important, that doesn't mean that I prioritize it above gun laws. See, I may say on my platform, mental health is important, but if we run down the list of things that come ahead of it, we will see that it might be number 10 and the NRA is number 1. And so when we are challenging our policymakers and the lobbyists and all of the people who are a part of the government that passes the budget, are we cutting funding from providing resources to these community mental health agencies, to social service agencies, to the things that matter the most? Or are we funneling our dollars to things that don't necessarily directly impact the citizens of this nation? So I would have to say, do I think it's important to them? Yes. Do I think it's a priority? It depends on whose agenda on what particular day.
Can I step in before you step in, Mr. Williams? With regards to the government, I think that, like she said, the importance is gauged on who it affects, what class of people it affects. Because you think about the drug epidemic and all this money being funneled into it now because it's affecting certain people. But before, when it was only affecting certain communities, it wasn't talked about. There was no money put towards it. But when it started affecting certain people, it was an importance. It was a priority.
Very good.
Brother McKently, you took the words right out of my mouth. You knew exactly where I was going with that. I do think mental health has been around for a long time. We all know that. I think that what we're seeing now, the emphasis put on it is because of the increasing numbers of mental health inside certain demographics. It's the same as like Mr. McKently said. It's the same as the opioid versus the crack cocaine pandemics. When it was crack cocaine, government could care less. When it became opioids, now it's a pandemic, and we need to put all our money into making sure that it doesn't kill our children. I think that's the same thing we're seeing with mental health. The numbers are increasing in certain demographics, and now the awareness is increasing. That Mental Health Awareness Month wasn't here, hasn't been around forever, So awareness is increasing, and I think as the issue now is it being put, is accessibility being where it needs to be? Are we putting it so that our low economical families can have access? Do they have access to treatment? Can they get the treatment through nonprofit organizations? Because it makes no sense for me if I live in the inner city and the closest treatment for me for mental health is 50 miles away or 30 miles away. That doesn't help me. So I think that if we really want the change, if the change is going to happen, we're going to see it push more into the communities where the stigma is very great, and we'll be there to be able to give them support so they can have access. So.
To your point, Alan, one of the things you also have to look at, just because I have access to care, that doesn't mean that it's quality care. So while I may have a slew of community mental health agencies, that doesn't mean that they necessarily have the experience to deal with me from a culturally responsive perspective. Because oftentimes there are people who don't look like us that are working in these agencies. And if you don't see me and understand me, you might not fully be able to see me as a whole person with all of my challenges that I bring. And so we also have to make sure when we are accessing these services that we are advocating for those who cannot, to make sure that they have quality providers providing the care.
This question is, for me, it's rather loaded. And I agree so much with what everybody has said. I really love that analogy too of priority and importance. But I also think the responsibility, we have a tendency to talk about the government as them, they over there, but we are a part of that government, and we are part of the problem, because we're, it's not as much of a priority to us, or else we would even do more. And I say that because, when we look at history and we look at examples like, those in the civil rights movement that were, tired of sitting on the back of the bus and tired of lynchings, tired of, their dignity not being acknowledged, having to, go to the bathroom in the bushes and all of that kind of stuff. What it took for them to change that is something that we've not yet done. That Montgomery bus boycott, for example, those people, they boycotted. That wasn't like a 2-week boycott. We got like 2-3 days to protest, and then we done. We got to go back. We got to go back to the AC, our comfort and everything. So we got like a few days in this protest. Some don't shift. Few days, we up, But that boycott lasted for over a year. People were willing to be inconvenienced and give up their own comfort for another. Not every situation has pulled that out of us, you see. The Freedom Riders, one of the most critical moments about the Freedom Riders, who were college students, by the way, that were taking those bus rides to desegregate facilities. And when President Kennedy had his attorney general to call and speak to Diane Nash to say, y'all don't do this, please don't do this, please don't, you know, we don't want to be on national TV as America or all this. She told him, you need to tell the president we have signed our last will and testament. So we're willing to die for this. So we're part of the government gets to do what it does. When you how many of us voted? Okay, so you know, the government gets to do what it does when we don't speak up, when we don't travel. And a lot of that does happen because, you know, when we're in survival mode and we're oppressed, it's a challenge for us to speak up. So I understand that. But if we keep pointing only over there as the government over there, that means we also keep surrendering our power over there. When I was in therapy, I remember telling my therapist, he hurt me. He hurt me. She said, he did. I said, yes, he hurt me. She said, wow, that's a lot of power to give somebody. Would you like to give him all that power? I said, no. She said, well, you don't have to. You can feel hurt, but you don't have to sit with, he hurt me. Because if he's the one that hurt you, then only he can heal you. So you can make a choice to feel this pain, but you don't have to surrender that kind of power to them. You have some ownership. And so when we talk about the political structure, we've got ownership in that. And we don't necessarily always make good on our ownership.
And I think we have ownership in a way. However, because we are such an individualistic society, it's very hard for us to go back to the collective view that the individuals during the civil rights had, because they had a vision, all of them collectively. There were, you know, white allies that were a part of that as well, but we have come from that. And it's like, we are so individualistic that we only, and I'm saying we, that doesn't mean me personally, but we collectively are very individualistic, where we seek out our own means or goods or our own vested interests. And sometimes for a lot.
I agree, but just as those in the civil rights movement, they were more convenienced than people in slavery.
That's
so
true.
At some point, something has to call on us to step up in a particular way. And so until that happens, we'll have this journey, you know, and I'm a part of it. So I'm not removing myself from it, because I'm only out there. Matter of fact, I never marched with Black Lives Matter. You see, so I'm owning my part too, you know. But when we talk about the political structure and government, we continue to put it over on them. And at some point, and it doesn't happen every day, and I understand that, and history shows us that it's not going to happen every day. But you know, certain moments happen that galvanize us and pull us into a position where we're willing to give up. We're willing to give up comfort. We're willing to give up convenience to hold our elected officials accountable. Doesn't happen every day, but some things not going to happen until we have those types of moments.
And the thing is, if we don't elect them, we can't hold them accountable. And I'm not saying we're not electing them. That's when people say, I'm not voting because my vote doesn't count. If you didn't vote, who are you holding accountable because your vote did not go to these people up here? So then they remove themselves because it's like, oh, that's not me. Even though they still live in the United States, it's like they separate themselves from the way that the United States is operating. Because they're like, I'm not voting. That doesn't bother me. And now we are where we are. And now, even more so than ever, we are now seeing the repercussions of us not voting, with all of these laws being just slightly just passed on and signed and put on the governor's desk and everything like that. But I think that is a whole nother conversation for a different night that relates to that.
No, all of these perspectives of the government is really, really good in what they are doing while we're facing this worldwide issue of mental health. Are they really, you know, putting things in place that are needed in all cultures of the different communities? So I agree with you all. And I wanted to ask just this quick question, and then we're going to go ahead and take a couple of questions from our viewers and then get back to our conversation. I want to pose the question to us here on this platform. How many of us are actually going out to some of the centers that some of our mental health patients, students in general are actually housed at? Have we done it recently, or have we done it in the past, and what have we kind of seen?
Where students with mental health issues are housed? Like a
Students
mental health
and
facility?
even some of our clients, some people we may know in general. Have we all been out to some of these different places just to see where they're housed, what's going on, what kind of care they are actually getting in these places? I can honestly say even recently and ongoing, I try to make my way out to them just to see, just to check in to see how they're doing, what's actually going on. Are they getting the care that they actually need? So I just wanted to pose that question to see, because, when we get out and we are in the trenches with them to see what's going on, it is true. It's not until we see some things that we'll want to make some things happen for it.
Well, I can say this,
And
seeing that I worked at a mental health facility, it goes back to something that Dr. Lewis said earlier about the individuals that you go seek help from being undereducated or underqualified. Some people have jobs just for the paycheck, but not for the impact. And so I know for mental health, the facility that I worked at, you had a lot of individuals who were undereducated, not qualified for the job. Therefore, the services or the people who seek services lacked because of that.
I think me personally, my position is a little bit different because I'm in it every day, and sitting and being the past president of the Mental Health Counselors of Central Florida, being connected with people who work at these organizations, and being a prior clinical director for an inpatient facility, knowing who's providing the service, and they come sit in all of the meetings and the membership board meetings and everything, and it's like, nah, I don't like the way they're running that over there. So if I have a friend or I know someone and they say, oh, I'm thinking about going here, I would say, oh, okay. What about this place? Have you thought about this place? Because I never want to speak down on an organization. I don't want to be one of those people, but I do want to make sure that I'm giving alternatives that might better suit the person, because like Gerard said, they just might not know. This might be the only resource that I was given as part of my discharge plan for me to go. Are there other alternatives? Are there other placements that maybe are not so well marketed, but they provide amazing care? There are so many treatment facilities that people don't even know exist that have, and I'm not just talking about amenities, but have amazing counselors that really do really good work, but people don't know about them either because they're too expensive or they just are not marketed where they have a lot of visibility. And so being able to be a voice and an advocate for that, to help people say, hey, this is an eating disorder clinic that's over here. Have you tried this? This is a place that specializes in sexual trauma. This is a place that specializes in sibling sexual assault. These are different places that specialize in different things, because you can have a place that say they specialize in trauma, but is it veterans trauma? You may have a program that specializes in vets versus teenagers, and making sure that you are connecting people with the appropriate level of care that they need. So for that question, I can say, yes, I am aware. And I know people, the clinicians, because that's the important part. I don't really care about the higher ups and the executives. I care about who the people providing the care, the BHTs, the people who are going to have everyday interaction with these patients, because the executives, they go home at night. The BHTs and the clinicians are the ones that are providing the care. What's their professionalism like? What's their commitment to the patients that we are placing in these facilities?
Thank you so much. I was waiting to ask that question. So at this time, we're going to bring Minister Sharita on to ask a couple of viewer questions, and then we're going to jump back into the combo.
This has been an awesome conversation thus far. I'm back here like hollering out. You can't see me, but I am literally hollering out. And so we have just a few questions, and they're probably going to be quick to answer. I'm going to ask this first one because it kind of came at the beginning of the conversation. The question is anxiety a trauma response or just a natural feeling we have to learn to cope with throughout life? Anxiety and the symptoms that come with it seems to interfere with everyday life. So I guess the question is anxiety a trauma response or just a natural feeling that we have learned to cope with throughout life? That's the first question.
So
We're gonna let the doctor answer that one.
So you have to understand that anxiety is a normal and natural response to stress or danger, right? And so I don't necessarily have to have a chemical imbalance to experience some form of stress. You have distress and you have eustress. Eustress is good stress, right? So when you're preparing for a party or when you're getting married, it's still a level of stress and anxiety, but it's in a different form. However, when anxiety becomes excessive or persistent, or it interferes with daily activities, that's when it can become problematic, and we will need to then seek help to help us manage the anxiety that we are experiencing. But if you get a little bit like anxious, like, I don't know, like, what is this? That is a natural response to stress or danger. And then that's when you have fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And so then you'll go through that whole cycle. That's later, but it can be normal. However, if it becomes excessive, you might want to get some help and assistance with that.
Okay, anyone else want to chime in on that particular question? All right, here's question number two. How do you tell someone they need to go, or not necessarily need to go, but they need to learn coping skills and strategies? How do you recommend that? And especially, let's talk about, because we are on, we're talking about ministry here, and we know people are spiritual, but the question is, how do you tell someone that they may need to go learn some of the coping skills and strategies that you all have spoke about?
I would say it depends on your relationship with that person. Because, I can talk to Silvia different than I talk to someone else because I know her. I have that relationship with her. So, hey, sis, you might want to get this checked out because you got this going on. So I believe it truly depends on the relationship with that individual.
All right, I saw thumbs up, so I'm assuming heads are nodding. Everybody's in agreement with that particular answer. So it's based on the relationship. Great. Last question, and then I'm going to come back off of here. So this one is from an educator who has a background in mental health. They see a lot of mental health issues exhibited amongst those in elementary school. And they want to know, how would you encourage and guide parents and guardians of elementary age children who are acting out in school and crying out for help? I can identify with this question as well, as I'm in the elementary school, and it is not just starting in teenage years. I'm talking about, we're seeing pre-K 3 and 4-year-olds, kindergartners, who is not just your basic crying or, a child behavior. It is excessive and extreme. How would you encourage and guide those parents?
Well, I will start, and then I'll let some of the others. I would honestly say a lot of people do not know about the different teams of professionals that we do have in Palm Beach County. And it wasn't until I actually switched over to PACE Center for Girls, which provides academic and mental health. And there is, and some may know about it, but there is a CAT team. And it's the community action team, and they deal with intense behavioral concerns. So it's a team of professionals who come together and they really dive in to see what the issue is, what the problem is, go out to the family home and do the family and strengthening care, total care provided to them, come up with different care plans or what have you, because it's some intense behaviors, that are actually going on that we need to identify. So I would say that. Mr. Williams, do you have anything?
I got something.
I'm going to say it still comes back down to relationships. We have to remember that inside certain communities, there is still a stigma when it comes down to education that that we are trying to label our boys and girls. So if you have a parent of an elementary school student and you haven't built that relationship, you come to them with some concerns, their pushback may be, you're just trying to label my kid. Okay. Because they don't understand it. They may not witness it, or they may push it off as that's normal it's normal for them because they may see it every day. So you may say, well, it's not normal for a student in that development. And they don't know that. They just know their child. So I would say it still comes back down to relationship. We're trying to have that. That's a hard conversation to have with any parent. If you have not built that relationship, whether it's a guidance counselor, assistant principal, teacher, whoever it is, it's still going to come down to your relationship with that parent and how can you have those tough conversations that need to be had with that parent so that they can trust you that what you're doing is not a gotcha or trying to put a negative label on their child, but truly trying to find the support and provide the support that child needs in order to be successful in education and in life.
And if I could add to that, like Mr. Williams said, a parent is presented with this when their child has an issue. I think that you will have a better response if all parents are educated on what's available at the school for their children regarding mental health, because a lot of parents just don't know. And the only way they found out is, my child got a problem in school, calling your child need to do this and your child didn't do that. But if you educate all parents, then you may have a better response when it comes to dealing with that individual child.
And one more thing to add to that, one of the things that's important to do is if you're sharing with a parent, because dealing with a child with emotional extremes can be very challenging to parents. They themselves don't even know what to do about this. And so being able to validate and listen to the parent's experience and provide empathy. If a parent feels that you're being critical of their parenting style and you're coming at them as if they are horrible, crappy parents, they're going to be less likely to take you the resources that may be valuable than if you come in and say, let me hear your experience. What are you feeling? Is this difficult for them? So I feel that we support the child by supporting the parents, and we can support the parents by listening to them and their experiences. And just because one solution worked for this set of children, that doesn't mean that it's going to work for this particular child. And so being able to have lots of resources to be able to provide, because what works for one does not work for all.
Definitely beautiful, all beautiful questions, all of those answers for the elementary age school children. I totally agree with why, because I sit and have those conversations at our elementary school. And number one thing is providing that conversation with the parents and listening to them first. And like you said, you will find out they don't know what to do. There's actually 2 more questions, and I do believe we need to hit these. How do you know if you need to get therapy or if I'm just feeling stressed and sad from life issues? So how do you know if you need to get therapy, or is it just I'm feeling stressed and sad from life issues?
I think we all need a little therapy at some point or not in our life. Y'all need to sit on somebody's couch, or to have a person who is trained or has some kind of background in that to be able to get it out. Okay, sometimes that's all you need to do. Sometimes you just need to get it out. You have to remember the most dangerous person, most dangerous voice is the one that's in your head. Okay, because it's the answers it gives you are going to be based off of your emotions that you're already feeling. So it can send you down a dark tunnel that you really don't want to go down, but because you don't have another voice, it is flooding. For me personally, I look at, like I said at the beginning, the 4 L's. If what I'm going through or what I'm feeling, if I'm not laughing, then it's affecting me. If I'm stuck in my house and don't want to get out, or it's changing, I don't want to be with my friends, then whatever I'm going through is affecting me. If I can't love a person, if I'm pushing people away and I don't want to be around, then what I'm going through is affecting me. So you have to look at those 4 L's that I talked about earlier, and that will give you a kind of a kick in the pants. Like, well, maybe this is maybe I'm not just sad, or maybe I'm not just whatever. Maybe this is a little more, and maybe I just need to go talk to somebody so I can get it out.
I was going to say something to that effect. If it's affecting your normalcy, because everybody's normal is different, if it affects that, then it's time to seek help.
And there are a lot of people that, since they were born, are born in a state of fight or flight. So they don't even know what normal is. So when we're saying, is this affecting these parts? They don't even have a baseline to see if it's affecting anything, because that's been their way for so long. So sometimes it takes someone to give them a little bit of nudge and say, hey, just because this is normal and familiar to you doesn't mean that it's healthy. But when we say that in a loving way so that they can receive it and not become defensive. And so for a lot of individuals, they don't even know that operating on no sleep and always being so hypervigilant and always being jumpy is not healthy or normal, right? Everybody has their own level of normalcy, or what they consider to be normal, but there is some levels that are definitely unhealthy, and there are some healthier ways that we show up. And if we are able to speak life and health and healing and happiness and wholeness and wellness into the people that are closest to us, then I think that they will realize that we're speaking to them from a place of love, and they would be more open to receiving that help that they need. There's not a one size fit all. And so what that looks like for everybody might be a little bit different. Some people may like the more holistic type of therapy, where I am walking and talking or doing yoga and meditation while I'm talking to my therapist. There are some more traditional therapists where they're just like, how does that make you feel? And then you have some non-traditional therapists like myself who are just like, okay, let's get this together. Let's figure out what's going on. Figuring out what type of clinician and service that they need is beneficial. And even if you don't go to a therapist, you may go to a coach, which is fine, okay? Because there's a place for all of us here. And so if you feel like you connect better with a coach, as long as you are getting the help that you desire and that you need, that's what's most important.
Beautiful answer, because it actually answered another question that we had about how can you find the right therapist. And I think that was an awesome answer. It's based on you and your need and where you are and what you're seeking for. I don't think it's a direct answer to say you need to go to this type of therapist. You have to go to where you need and what is helping you. Beautiful answer to that. One more question, Karen. I'm going to turn it back over to you. Okay. I didn't know the questions were going to roll in like this, guys. They just started rolling, right? So this question says, and it says, is having the ability to see people or know things before it happened a mental illness? Okay, I'm gonna ask this again. Is having the ability to see people or know things before it happens a mental illness?
That's a really, really good question. I actually was just in conversation with a colleague who was Baker acted. We're in Florida, so we all know that term. Who was Baker acted, and one of the charges was that she says that God is talking to her. And so it's a really, really good question. So I mean, this is faith-based, so it makes it even easier to talk through, you know, this. I'm a fourth generation pastor as well. And so most of us would quickly agree that that's a prophetic gifting, right? To hear, see, and so forth. And people hear it and see it on different levels. I know we can make some distinctions if you say you hear a voice telling you to kill somebody, or you hear a voice telling you to hurt somebody. So we can make those distinctions. But to take the question on face value, you know, we don't have actually a lot of places that really encourage people how to really work with these different gifts, you know, that they may have. I happen to be over the fivefold ministry nationally. And so we haven't always done a lot of teaching. I actually grew up in a home church where, you know, don't be getting up and doing all that prophesying and seeing and hearing and carrying on, you know. So really good question. I'll just give that little bit and I'll back out because the others may have some richer thoughts about, you know, what that means outside of a spiritual gift. But as a spiritual gift, that's why being connected to, I presume, faith, word of faith, you have to be a well-rounded church to offer something like this. So I would vouch and say this must be a healthy, well-rounded ministry. And if you're in the Palm Beach area and you're looking for a connection, this might be a place to connect to, because it sounds to me like you'll be able to get some good Bible study, fivefold teaching to support you in your area of gifting, whether it's evangelistic, prophetic, apostolic, or whatever. And you'll also be able to access some tools for mental health when the voice that you're hearing is not the voice of love, is not the, you know, is not the voice of care, and not the voice of love. I'll leave it there.
I would have to say, as a clinician, that's why it's so important to make sure you find a clinician that aligns with you spiritually, because you can go to someone and they may be saying, oh no, we need to initiate a Baker Act for this person who is saying X, Y, and Z, when if you come from a similar background, and I'm not even just talking about Christians, I'm talking about even if you're talking about, you know, Mexican culture or tradition and some of the things that they experience and other different type of rituals that culturally people believe in different things. Let's even take the Native Americans or the indigenous people to this land. They even have their traditions and the different types of things that they believe in. And if you don't understand, you may misinterpret what it is that they are saying. And so that's why having a culturally responsive clinician to provide the services to you is so important. I remember I had a situation where I was doing EMDR, and that's a treatment intervention. And the patient felt it and I felt it too. We were doing our thing, and as soon as she started physically crying, I felt this heaviness in my spirit. Something dark came into the room as we were speaking. It was like a heavy presence. Now, I was a little bit nervous to share that with our EMDR group because most of them are like this and not like this. However, when I was speaking to people who are more closely related to me, they were like, oh my God, that happened to me too. But I just never said anything because I didn't want anybody to think that I was, you know, a crazy clinician or anything. I was like, oh no, I have never experienced anything like that. And so being able to also find people who you can talk to about the things that happen inside of the office while keeping confidentiality, of course, but knowing and being able to validate your clients in supporting them and saying, you are not crazy, because we don't even use the word crazy. But sometimes for them, they're like, nobody's going to believe me if I say this. And as a clinician, you know the line. We can do a little bit of reality testing to make sure that they're not, having any hallucinations or delusions of grandeur and anything like that. You rule that out, and you just have to take them at face value because everybody experiences different things.
That is so true, and that is so good. And I'm glad that we actually shifted to this, because I want to shift gears a little bit now on the spiritual side of things. And I want to ask you all this question. What do you really feel and think that the church is actually saying about mental health worldwide and globally? What do you think the church is actually saying about mental health?
Well, that's why I think Word of Faith is very unique, and I applaud this ministry because most churches are not yet talking about it, and not only most churches not talking about it, as Dr. Lewis was saying, most churches are not holding a space in a non-judgmental way, because some of what we're dealing with, maybe even judged from a traditional Christian standpoint. And so, holding space for all of these many scenarios that we may be working through is not even all acceptable in many Christian spaces. So I applaud Word of Faith, but the answer to the question is most churches are still very behind. Most churches may even, only even say, go see a Christian therapist. I'm seeing a Christian. I'm seeing a therapist. Is they Christian? And when I went to look for a therapist, I did start looking for someone who was brown skinned because I did desire to make sure they could relate. But I'm going to tell you what's most important is to have some kind of a discernment, to empower people to discern, even if they've had one session, they had some sessions with somebody else, but to eventually, I know you might not start off this way, but eventually in this process, empower people with a sense of discernment about how did you really feel in those sessions? Did you feel lifted? Did you feel higher or what have you? Because when I went to explore and select a therapist, I read the bio for the Black lady that was a part of the group, and I couldn't feel her. I couldn't feel nothing about that bio. I saw the white lady and I'm like, now she is speaking to me. So I went to her because something about her spoke to me. And I said to myself, I'm gonna give her one good time to match this paper. And she matched the paper. And I told her the truth. I said, I was gonna give you one good time to match this paper. And she matched that paper. And I worked with her for 2 years. And after that, I did my best to try to get as many people as I could to go to her. I couldn't get everybody to her. So then I discontinued my services with her so we wouldn't violate anything, called her my life coach. And we started offering sessions at the hotel. Y'all come to the Fairfield. We got a workshop for y'all at the Fairfield. We had everybody in counseling at the Fairfield Hotel, okay? We had a whole series. We had about 5 months of sessions up there. I had students in there, parents in there, everybody in there. I can't get y'all to go to her, so I'm gonna bring her to you. And so, so empowering people at some point to have some discernment, even if you can't start there. Sometimes when you're in survival mode, you just get to the fastest, quickest, so to speak, safest place you can. But again, salute to Word of Faith and the pastors for really holding this and keep doing this. I might not be a guest next year, and that's fine. You can rotate some people, get some fresh voices and faces in here, but keep doing it because people are hurting, people are crying out, and church has not always been, contrary to what we say and think, church has not always been the safest place to seek help. And so this ministry is posturing itself to really change some of those experiences that people have had. So I don't know how many times you have this event, but I encourage you, and again, salute the pastor, keep doing it. Because people need it, pastors need it, everybody. We have a fund. I mentioned this last year. Our ministry nationally, we have a mental health fund. so that we can help pay for people to actually receive services. So keep doing it. But again, I don't talk for 30 minutes. To answer your question, most churches, no, we're behind. But this right here is setting an example, a new kind of example. And we need for this to keep happening.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. And that is so true, because I think, like I said, globally, it needs to be heard, because the church is one of the greatest influences in the world. Because whether we know it or not, when something happens, even for those who are not Christians, when something does actually happen to them, traumatic experiences, funerals, and things of that nature, they come to the church. So we do have a big influence, and that's just one area, but they come to the church. So we do have a big influence on the world globally. So we should be doing these empowerment sessions around the world so that people can get better, people can get healthier in their minds, in their hearts, and in their spirits, in their souls.
I'm gonna go a step further, and it's a thick statement, but we have to be true to ourselves. The more I'm going to say situated, the more situated we become, the more firm we become in our calls as ministries, faith-based and so forth. I'm not going to say we won't ever need a doctor or mental health therapist. I'm not going to say that, but the more we allow ourselves to operate truly in the mountain, Matthew 5, the more we allow ourselves to operate in perfect love, then we will actually be able to facilitate more healings with and without medicines and so forth. But I'm not against medicines. Just make that clear, because most of our mental health issues come from a place of fear, right? In therapy, we looked at we call it your two dominant, emotions. It's either coming from a place of love or a place of fear. And so when most of our issues are coming from fear, the Bible says perfect love, come on, cast out fear. And so the more we are able to grow in that, and the church is still growing, we're still evolving, right? And so the more we continue to evolve, and not all of this is going to happen in my time. Come on, we've been waiting on Jesus for 2,000 years. So it may be another 2,000 years. So just keep evolving, right? Keep evolving. When I was a little girl, we didn't even talk about going to college because Jesus come back soon. So you don't even need education. Jesus coming back. Right? So keep evolving. But the more we do this kind of thing, we grow in our love. We grow in manifesting the love of God, for God is love. So the more we grow in this, the better partners we would be with clinicians, like Dr. Lewis and Dr. Williams, and I'm gonna say Dr. McKinney and so forth. I got on bifocals and I still can't barely see. That's
all right,
It's
Dr.
McKenna, but I
Jones.
received that doctor. It's McKenna, but I received that doctor.
That's okay. So you all, before we get ready, we're winding down. There are two more questions I want to get in for this conversation. One is, what do you all feel in regards to leadership in church, in the marketplace, being in leadership and not caring for their mental health? Do you think that they can effectively lead others if their mental space is not okay?
No, that's why Jesus took time to go away as well. You got to get away. Jesus went to the garden. He cried. He did all of that. So leaders have to do it too. And if we don't do it, we're part of the problem. So leaders, we need help too. Get the help. Being in leadership does not exempt you from the help. You must be a role model in seeking it. You must be a role model in testifying about the help that you've received. Mm-hmm. So we say we're going to follow Jesus. Well, follow him. Get some help.
I would say you can't pour from an empty cup. If I am emotionally depleted, that can spill into my spiritual level of depletion. And so how can I lead when I'm emotionally and spiritually depleted? no one's going to be getting fed, and my vision might be blinded, and I then will no longer be able to lead the people. And so, yes, you definitely have to be able to make sure you are balancing. Now, that balance looks different for everybody. Some people may need to be able to say, you know what, I'm taking on too many responsibilities, or I am working too much, or I need to delegate, or I need to just take a sabbatical, or I need to take time out, or I need to elevate someone else, or I need to learn the power of no, or I need to learn how to ask for help. See, a lot of people in leadership positions don't necessarily know how to ask for help. And I'm saying that because I'm speaking from my own personal place, being able to say, you know what, I don't have to be Superwoman or Superman. I am able to say, you know what, I am a human, and this is my capacity. I can lead you. I can hold space for you. I can do all of these things. But at the end of the day, I am still human. And so just as everybody else, I have human emotions. I get discouraged. I become disappointed. I get upset. I get angry. But when I have the emotional space to regulate myself, I better am aligned with the leadership duties that I have been entrusted with. It's my duty to be able to balance my emotions so I can better serve and lead people.
Yes, because as we started out, you'll be able to think better. You'll be able to relate better, because, we are human, and we're going to have different things that come up, different mood swings, things of that nature. But if we are not okay ourselves, if we're not healthy in our mental state, if we are half empty, then we can't pour from that cup. We need to be full. So we need to have rest. We need to go see someone if we need to make sure that we're good. We're good for others because we're leaders. And we have to lead by example because we want them to get help. So we have to invest too as well for ourselves so that we're okay for the others that we are leading. So that is good. Anyone else want to share before? I knew you wanted to say something. Dr. G. Allen. Yeah.
My mute button ain't working fast enough.
So, I always think of it like this is for our leaders. As a leader, you're always taking on and accepting other people's problems. You're taking up some of their baggage. And and I know Dr. Lewis said you can't pour from an empty cup, right? And I think that sometimes leaders we get so much, and we're so used to our baggage being heavy and our bag being heavy, and we're like, man, this is a lot, this is a big load, And sometimes we say, well, I'm just gonna take it to God. That's good, do that, but sometimes you got to do the work too. You have to actually do the work. You actually have to go out there and take your mental breaks and do what you need to do for your self-care. If you talk to anybody, you talk to people who are and I know Dr. Lewis does this, I know she has her self-care routine. Whatever she needs, when she's feeling, when she's taking all this stuff on, I'm sure she has her self-care routine so she can keep her mental health strong, so she can give more to her patients. And that's what pastors and leaders have to realize. You have to do your self-care so that you can continue to give and continue to feed into your flock.
And to add to that, I think that what Cortina said is showing people that you're human. I know a lot of times in leadership, we try to act like, or try to put on this persona that we're superhuman. But like G. Allen said, once you show the people that, hey, I'm human too, and I'm seeking help as well, you showing people that, okay, that it's okay for you to seek help. I'm not superhuman. I'm just like you. I need help as well. And so I think that will encourage others to do the same.
That is so true, which brings me kind of sort of to my last question. I had one more after this that I wanted to get in, but I wanted to ask you all, have you all had any experiences within yourselves as human with mental health experiences? And if you would mind just sharing a little tidbit of it, or even someone connected to you in your family or what have you that you had to go dive deep with in regards to that. Oh, and I got one more, y'all, but I don't know if you're gonna be able to get it in. Ooh, but go ahead.
I'll share. Growing up, well, as I became an adult, I realized that I did struggle with depression. and self-harm growing up as a child, you know, and I write about that in my book. And I was the perfectionist at wearing a mask. Like, you could not look at me and say she was depressed or she was cutting or any of those things, because I did not show it. I masked it very well because I had to be polished. I had to be buttoned up. I had to get the grades. I had to have great manners and perform. And that was the problem. I always felt like I was on a stage and that I could never be off, which spilled into my adult life, where it's like, okay, I'm struggling with anxiety now. I'm hyperventilating. I'm having panic attacks. And, you know, I'm like, okay, this is not cool. I'm accomplished. I'm motivated. I have all of these things happening in my life. Why am I being impacted by mental health challenges when this is my field? This is what I do. But I'm human. And I had to go back, regroup, and reflect on what the heck is happening in my life that's causing me to be out of alignment and out of balance, right? So even now, where I am, being able to say, you know what, I'm feeling overwhelmed. One, I have to acknowledge it. Two, I have to figure out, what am I going to do about feeling the way that I feel? I'm overwhelmed, I'm stressed. Okay, what can I do? And then having good, an amazing husband and a good partner and great close circle network friends that are able to support you and hear you when you need it. Like I said earlier, you know, someone in the field, most people, well, some people would be like, oh my gosh, I can't let people see my vulnerability. You work with people every day. You're supposed to know how to do these things. That is true. But I also have to be able to implement what I help everybody else do on a daily basis. And that's where a lot of providers lack. They know how to give the information. They know the information, but they fail at implementation of the information that they provide to everybody else.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Oh God, thank you. Thank you all so much. I am going to stop us right here with the conversation, but there's so much more that we can discuss. We could go on and on. I have so many more questions, but at this time, I want to give you all a moment to have a last little reflection or a last impression that you want to leave on the viewers on today. So a last remark or last reflection, or a little tidbit to give to them before we end.
Okay,
Anyone
I'll go
go
first.
first? Or you?
I'll go first.
Okay.
I just want to encourage all the parents to pay attention to your children, what they look at on social media, because social media is a detriment to our kids, technology in general. Just pay more attention to your kids, and self-love is the best love.
Thank you, Mr. McKently.
I'll jump in next. I want people to think about their self-care and their mental health. You know, you have to find your balance. Seek your balance. If you have to talk to somebody, there's no shame in it. If you see my background, it says break the stigma, and that's what we need to be doing. We need to be focusing on breaking the stigma inside of our communities, with our children, with ourselves. A lot of us are suffering from PTSD and we don't even know it. A lot of us are suffering through past traumas, and we don't know it. And I would just encourage everyone to concentrate on themselves, think about their mental health, and remember the 4 L's that I talked about earlier.
I would say I would like to challenge everyone to go back into their childhood, right? Like, visualize yourself as a child. And I want for you to pick an age that you needed an adult the most. And you, as your current adult self, speak to that wounded child. And it doesn't have to be a deep wound. It can be, my feelings were hurt when my mom said this. And speak back to yourself about what you would have liked to have heard then. Because a lot of times we carry those wounded children with us every day. And when we are responding to people, we're responding from that unhealed inner child So I would say, do something nice, say something nice, and go back and support, pour love and hugs onto that wounded inner child. And so you can just reflect back. You can say, the worst time of my life when I was a child, I was 7 years old and I couldn't go to the amusement park because of this. Okay, if that is your worst, then that's your worst. What at that moment of your life, what did you need? And then reflect on how that felt to be able to validate that child in that moment. That's what I challenge you to do.
I amen our panel. And again, I'm grateful for Word of Faith hosting this event. Blessings.
Thank you all again so much. And before we bring our pastor on, Pastor Jonathan, before the last remarks, I want to read to our viewers 2 quotes, and they're very brief. And it says, "You don't have to be positive all the time. It's perfectly okay to feel sad, angry, annoyed, frustrated, scared, and even anxious at times. Having these feelings doesn't make you a negative person, it makes you human. But I want you to know that your mental health, it deals with those different things, and your mental health is everything. So prioritize it, make the time like your life depends on it, because your life does depend on your mental health for you to be able to interact, to relate, to have relationships, and to just be in this world. So make it a priority, for your mental health, like your life depends on it. Pastor Jonathan, final remarks.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much. I really enjoyed the session, really enjoyed the conversation. There is so much more that we as a church should do, and the churches across the country, across the world can do. There are so many things that we love to talk about in church, and then there's so many things that we miss. And the mental health of our members and family and friends is one of them. So thank you all for being part of this conversation. Thank you all for sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, and expertise. And I pray that you all continue to pray for us so that we can be more than just a church concerned about spiritual health. We also need to be concerned about mental health as well. So God bless you all, and thank you very much.
Well, guys, thank you. Let's give a round of applause if you're at your house, wherever you are. Let's give a round of applause for our panelists, our moderator for tonight, who so graciously moderated us through this conversation. It was so much more we have, but that means we'll save it for the next time. We want to thank ATF for coming together and putting this together, our pastors for allowing this conversation to go forth. And it would not be a conversation if you all, as our attendees and viewers, were not a part. We want you to be blessed on tonight. We want you to go ahead, go see about your families, go get you something to eat. Be blessed on tonight. Be safe if you're traveling along the way. We thank the Lord now, God. We thank you for this time that we were able to come together in this conversation, pour back into our panelists and moderator of what they have given out. We ask that you continue to increase in their lives, and that, God, we will forever be grateful for who you are in our lives. Thank you, God, that you will continue to help us keep a sound mind and a pure heart. And so we honor you today in Jesus' name. Go in grace and peace. We love you. Thank you for joining us today.